find out why you left him, but this answer begs that question. Too blind to see tomorrow, too broke to beg or borrow.
Now we're going to talk about finding the area of a shaded region. So sometimes problems are going to have things where they have parts shaded and parts unshaded, and they want you to find just the area of the shaded region or just the area of the unshaded region. So in order to do this, to find the area of the shaded region, you take the total area there is minus the shaded area that's there. Let's take a look at the first example. So example A says Andy is putting a grass in the space surrounding his two circular ponds, as shown by the shaded region. What is the area of the grass? So we're looking for just the shaded region. And there's a second question. This is Andy can lay 5 squares of feet of grass per minute. To the nearest minute, how long will it take him to put the grass around the pond? So the first thing we need to do is figure out what the total area is and then take out just the grass. So to do that, we've got to figure out what the two ponds are going to be. So unfortunately, I know my area formula for a circle is going to be a equals pi r squared. But I need to figure out what the radius is, and right now I don't have any measurements of my circle to help me. But the good news is that the ponds go from one edge of the rectangle to the other. So if the width of the rectangle is 18, that means that going all the way across my pond in a straight line down the middle will also be 18. And that will be my diameter. So for the first circle, it's 18, and for the second circle, it's 18 as the diameter. So I know that if the diameter is 18, the radius is going to be half of that, and half of 18 is 9. So let's plug in the area formula for the circle. So I got my A equals 3.14. I know my radius now is 9, so I've got 9 squared. And then I'm going to do the order of operations. I'm going to square first, so 9 squared is 81. So I've got my 3.14 times 81. Or write that twice for some reason. Then I'm going to multiply them together, and when I do that, I get area equals 254.34 feet squared once I round. So that tells me how much one of my circles are. Now I've got to figure out the area of my rectangle, and unfortunately for my rectangle, I only have one of the measurements that I know. The width is the 18 feet. So I've got to figure out what the length is. But there's also good news there. So if I know the diameter across my circle is 18, it's that the same way vertically up and down as it is horizontally. So I know across the circle is also 18, and across this circle is 18. So if they go edge to edge with the grass is 18, then I know that the entire length is going to be 18 plus 18, so that's going to be 36. So that gives me my length of 36. So let's go ahead and plug in our things that we need in our formula. So I know our formula for a rectangle is length times width. I'm going to plug in my 18 times 36, and when I do that, I get area equals 648. But now I have to subtract out the ponds so that I know just what's left for the grass of the rectangle. So I'm going to take my 648 and I'm going to subtract out the ponds. However, when I figured out the area of the ponds, I only figured out one circle, but there's 2 ponds. So I have to take my area and multiply that times 2 for the 2 ponds that are there. When I do that, I get 508.68 feet squared. So remember, there's 2 ponds, so I had to multiply it by 2. So to do some math now, I'm going to take my 648, subtract the 508.68, and I'm going to get 139.32 feet squared. But that's not the end of my problem, because it says Andy can lay the 5 feet of grass per minute. So to the nearest minute, how long will it take them to put the grass around the pond? So I'm going to take my 139.32 feet that needs to be grassed, divide by 5, and that will give me 27.864 minutes. But it said round to the nearest minute, so my 8 is going to make my 7 go up. So it's going to take 28 minutes to put the grass around the pond. Let's take a look at the next one. The next one says Tamara is painting the front of her store, but she will not paint the doorway. What is the area of the space she will paint? And then a second question says a can of paint covers 400 square feet. How many cans will be used to apply 2 coats of paint? So that's probably important. So let's start by finding the area of the front of our building. So our building's a rectangle, so I'm going to use my area formula for rectangle, length times width. 22 times 33, because that's the width and the height, or the width and the length. And when I do that, I get area equals 726. So that was easy because it was just a regular rectangle, easy formula. Now I got to take a look at my doorway. And unfortunately, my doorway is not a regular shape. It's made up of two shapes. It appears to be made up of a triangle and a rectangle. So I'm going to need two different formulas to figure out the area here. So I'm going to put over here that we're finding the door so that I know these calculations are going to be for the door. So I'm going to start with the rectangle, and I can see the rectangle has a length of 11 feet and a width of 8 feet. So I'm going to take my length times width for my rectangle, take my 11 and my 8, and when I multiply them together, I get my area equals 88. But again, that's not just that doesn't cover the whole door because there's that top part that's a triangle. So I'm going to use my area formula for triangle for that. So that's 1/2 height times base. Now looking at my formula, or looking at my picture, I can see that the height is 2. And I need to figure out the base. Now there's no base immediately on the triangle, but since it's the same length as the doorway at the bottom at the rectangle, then I know this is also going to be 8. So I know that my base is 8. So I can plug in area equals 1/2 times 2 times 8. When I do that, I get area equals 8. So now I need to subtract out the doorway from the 726 feet. So in order to do that, I have to subtract both parts. I have to subtract the rectangle and the triangle. Could you add them together and then subtract? Of course, but I'm going to just subtract right away. So I'm going to take my 726 minus 88 minus 8. And when I do that, the amount I have left over is area equals 630 feet. But that's not the end of the question. The question says that she can paint 400 square feet per can. How many cans does she need to apply 2 coats? So I'm not going to just take my 630 and divide it by the number of cans because I'm trying to apply 2 coats. So I have to paint the whole thing twice. So I'm going to multiply my 630 times 2 and then divide by the 400 square feet so I can determine how much it goes in. So when I multiply, I get 1,260 because I want 2 coats, divide by 400 because that's how much is covered. And when I do that, I get 3.15. Now, I can't have 3.15 cans of paint, so I have to buy a 4th can. So my answer is 4 cans. Now, this is an example where your word problem and your word answer aren't going to necessarily match the math that you do 100%. Yeah, 4 cans is the right answer because that's how many you have to buy, but you didn't end up with just 4. You ended up with 3.15. So you have to make sure that you're using your thought process and determine, hey, if I buy 3 cans, that's not going to be enough. So I have to buy a 4th can because you don't go to the store and say, hey, I'd like to buy 3.15 cans of paint. That's not a thing. All right, let's take a look at the next one. Okay, this problem says Martin is making a banner of gray and white fabric as pictured below. How much gray fabric will she need, or he need? So we have 2 shapes here. We've got a semicircle and we've got a triangle. So we have to figure out what the triangle is and the semicircle is and remove out the triangle because that's the white fabric and we're not looking for the white fabric. So I'm going to start with my semicircle. And again, I don't have an area formula for semicircle on my formula sheet unless I wrote it down from earlier. But I know I can adapt my area formula of pi r squared and divide by 2 because I'm talking about half a circle. So let's plug in the things that we see. So we can see our radius is going to be 0.3 meters. It may not be on your paper, but we know the entire diameter is 0.6 and half of 0.6 is going to be 0.3. So we're going to plug in our 3.14, our 0.3 squared, and divide by 2. We're going to use our order of operations. We're going to square first, and when we do that, we end up with 0.09 times 3.14. We're going to do everything on the top, divide by 2. And when I do that, I end up getting area equals 0.1413 feet. Now let's take a look at the triangle. So I'm going to take out my triangle formula. My area equals 1/2 the height times the base. And I know that my height of my triangle is 0.3, but I don't know my base. But good news, since the triangle goes halfway across the circle, I know that it's going to be half of the diameter. And since the diameter is 0.6, I know that my radius is also, or my radius and my base are going to be the same at 0.3. So let's plug in. Area equals 1/2 times 0.3 times 0.3. And when I do that, I end up with an area of 0.045. Now, I'm going to have to subtract out the triangle part. So I'm going to take my 0.143 minus my 0.045. So when I do that, I end up getting 0.0963. But I'm not done. So it says the fabric costs $6.75 per square meter. How much will he spend on the fabric? So we're going to take our 0.1413 times the $6.75. When I do that, it's going to cost about 95 cents in fabric. This completes this set of notes. If you liked this video, throw us a thumbs up. If you loved it, give us a sub.
Stupid, left wide open, hearts are wasted, lives are broken. One more point of contention.